All right, welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're going to be looking at something, maybe a little bit different.
Yeah.
Something you might not expect, but something I think is going to be really, really interesting. We're going to be looking at Melbourne crepes.
Okay.
Through the lens of Jacques Derrida.
Interesting combination.
Yeah, so
I like it.
I know it sounds a little out there, right?
Yeah.
Crabs and Derrida, but trust me on this one. Because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at how Derrida's ideas can actually help us to understand what it means for anything to be to actually exist.
We are not to be.
Yeah.
That is the question.
Exactly, and we're going to be using these crabs as a kind of a jumping off point to explore some pretty big concepts like identity, how things change and how everything's kind of connected.
I'm intrigued. Let's dive in.
So the text that we're looking at today talks about how these Melbourne crabs, it uses this phrase, it says they destabilize our ontological certainties.
Okay.
Now I know ontological certainties, that's a mouthful.
Right. Yeah.
But basically what that means is it's challenging the way that we think about what it means for something to exist, to have like a solid identity.
Right.
And the text brings up this concept of difference.
Right.
So can you maybe break that down for us a little bit? What is difference? How does it relate to crabs?
Yeah. So difference with an A.
With an A.
It's a little bit of a play on words that Derrida uses, and it's this idea that meaning isn't something that's like, fixed.
Yeah.
It's not this like stable thing. It's all kind of in process.
Right.
It's being shaped by what it's not.
Okay.
Its differences, and it's also always being deferred. So like the full meaning of snake crab, it's never fully present.
Okay.
It's always kind of like just beyond our grasp, just out of reach.
I see.
It's always becoming something else.
Oh, that's fascinating. And this is where it starts to get really interesting to me because the text talks about molting. So how does a crab shedding its shell?
Yeah.
How does that kind of illustrate this idea of a changing identity?
Yeah, well, molting, you can see it as this really powerful metaphor for change.
Yeah.
Because when a crab loses its shell and grows a new one, it's literally becoming a new version of itself.
Right.
It's in this constant state of becoming rather than just being.
I see.
Right, and the text talks about this as the aporia of stable presence.
Okay, another mouthful there.
Yeah, but what it really means is that it's, like you said, it's so hard to pin down exactly what a crab is.
Right.
When it's always changing.
Yeah, like almost like it's an same crab.
Exactly, yeah. It's like trying to define something that's constantly in motion, constantly transforming.
So the crab is never quite the same, and it's also not, it's not existing in isolation. The text mentions this idea of an oceanic web of signifiers.
Yeah.
So can you unpack that for us? What does that mean?
So the crabs aren't just these lone individuals, right? They're part of this massive interconnected network.
Right, the ocean?
The ocean, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And this web of signifiers means that everything in that environment is influencing everything else.
Okay.
Right, so the crab's meaning isn't just coming from its own physical form. It comes from its relationship to all these other things in the ocean.
I see. So it's defined by its place in this whole system.
Exactly, yeah. And this connects to another idea that Derrida talks about, which is intertextuality.
Okay.
And you can think about it like this: how the meaning of a word changes depending on the sentence that it's in.
Right.
The other words are around it.
Yeah.
So the crab's meaning is kind of like that.
Right. So the crab is almost like a word.
In a way.
In a giant sentence.
Yeah, you could think of it like that.
That is the ocean.
Right.
Okay.
And, we've been talking about how hard it is to define this crab.
Yeah.
And the text takes it even further and calls the crab this ontological figure moving between visibility and invisibility. Ontological sounds kind of spooky, right?
Yeah, it does.
But it's basically describing something that's both present and absent, visible and invisible.
Like a ghost.
Yeah, like a ghost, right? Or imagine a crab darting under a rock
Yeah.
and then reappearing.
Right.
It's not always there for us to see, but we know it's still around. And this kind of movement between being seen and unseen, it just adds to the difficulty of pinning down a clear definition.
Right, it's like it's always just out of reach a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, and then this leads to this concept of non-closure of identity.
Yes.
Because the crab keeps molting.
Right.
But never really reaches like a final form.
Exactly. Is a new version,
Right.
similar to the last, but never exactly the same. Okay.
And Derek talks about this as iterability,
Okay.
which is this repetition but with difference.
Yeah.
So the crab's identity is never truly finished.
Okay.
It's always becoming.
Right.
And it's actually interesting.
Yeah.
The text uses the word grammatological to describe this.
Okay.
Which suggests that being is like a text that can only be read as this ongoing, ever-shifting thing.
Okay, I see. So it's like the crab is a text
And in a way, yeah.
that's constantly being written.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And resist any kind of final interpretation.
So just to kind of bring it all back together, these Melbourne crabs, when we look at them through Derrida's philosophy, they're really challenging our simple ideas about what it means to be anything.
Exactly.
They're showing us that things are always changing,
Yeah.
everything's connected, and that meaning itself might be something that's always kind of slippery,
Yeah.
always evolving. And I think what's so cool about this is that we're using this like seemingly abstract philosophical perspective
Yeah.
to understand something as ordinary as a crab.
Right, and it's giving us these really profound insights
Right.
about, much bigger questions of existence.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So here's something for you to think about.
Okay.
Think about other things in your life that seem really straightforward. Like your favorite possession.
Okay.
Or even how you think about yourself.
Yeah.
Do these ideas of constant change and interconnectedness apply there too? Is anything really fixed? And what does it mean to be in a world that's always becoming?
That's a great question to ponder.
I think so. I think so. Well, hey, thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, we'll catch you next time.
That's good.